Hello, my name is Kittinak Tawisinthananon. Today I would like to talk about distributed acoustic sensing for near-surface imaging using submarine telecommunication cable, which is a case study in Trondheimsfjord, Norway. This is a part of a paper published in Geophysics Journal. I am currently a PhD candidate at the Department of Electronic Systems at Norwegian University of Science and Technology, or NTNU. I am a geophysicist and researcher with solid experience in seismic acquisition, data processing, and seismic imaging. I've been working in PTTEP, which is a national oil company in Thailand, for 10 years before joining NTNU. The outline of the talk, I will start with the introduction to marine seismic exploration, then distributed acoustic sensing, followed by the experimental setup and data acquisition, the DAS data characteristics, methods, and show you the results and conclusion. Here we start with the introduction. Some challenges in seismic reflection survey in shallow water environment are illumination holes. The conventional seismic survey carried by the seismic vessels, towing seismic sources and hydrophone streamers behind, will have sparse sampling of the source position in the cross-line direction. Two sources from two consecutive sail lines are not close enough. So when they record the seismic reflection data, they miss uh, the near offset seismic reflection data that is crucial for seismic imaging of the near surface structure. Typical streamer seismic acquisition will be limited by the narrow azimuth seismic survey geometry, and only P waves are recorded since the receiver are in the water body. So with the limited seismic azimuth, we cannot produce very nice seismic image in the complicated geological structures or the imaging the seismic structure below the shallow gas problems. People propose another technique called ocean bottom seismic technology by placing receivers on the seabed. Here you can design the receiver geometry to be wider azimuth or full azimuth compared to the traditional streamer seismic acquisition. And since receivers are coupled to the survey, we can record both P wave and S wave at the same time, and then we can produce very nice seismic image even in very complex seismic structure. Next, I will introduce the distributed acoustic sensing, or we can call it DAS. Distributed acoustic sensing, or DAS, is an imaging technology that uses fiber optic cable for acoustic measurements. DAS transforms a fiber optic cable into a densely sampled acoustic sensor array. The cable itself is the sensing element without additional transducers in the optical path. Label pulses transmitted into the fiber from the interrogator unit are continuously reflected to the interrogator itself due to the Rayleigh backscattering process inherent to all optical fiber optic cables. The phase of the backscattered light will be changed if there exists acoustic wave impinging and interact with the fiber optic cable. The phase of the backscatter light is reconstructed within the interrogator, typically for each meter of the fiber optic cable. Because the phase of the reflected optical light is proportional to the strain of the fiber, the distributed strain modulation across a fiber segment can be computed. Therefore, DAS can send seismic waves that modulate the extensional strain of the fiber segment. And we can obtain the axial strain by integrating the strain rate along the time axis. DAS measures average strain resulting from two field arrays. The first one is to determine the phase difference by the differentiation between two signals from two consecutive elements separated by gauge length. And another field array is the moving average by average the result of the differentiation for consecutive elements separated by pulse width. And these two arrays form the array response according to this equation. If we have small gauge length, we will have the very high resolution seismic data, but poor signal to noise ratio. However, if we increase the gauge length, we can have very high signal to noise ratio. However, we lose the seismic resolution in the data. And the longitudinal strain can be related to the strain field by the projection of the strain field in particular ray direction using cosine square theta, where the theta is the grazing angle between the impinging wave path to the longitudinal axis of the fiber optic cable. The amplitude response of DAS according to mapping the propagating strain field onto the optical path change as defined by cosine square theta in the previous slide are somewhat similar to the amplitude variation with angles on inline component of the accelerometers. You can see that the DAS amplitude response is quite high when the grazing angle is at 0 degree, which means that the propagating wave path is parallel to the fiber optic cable. However, when the wave ray path is perpendicular to the fiber optic cable, the amplitude is reduced and almost zero at the 90-degree grazing angle, which is similar to the inline component accelerometer. However, if we investigate in detail in a paper by PAPS for the lab experiment, They observed that the amplitude of the dash uh, data is not perfectly zero as in the inline component of accelerometer. However, it is slightly negative amplitude at the center. So even though the characteristic is similar, like decaying from high amplitude to low amplitude when reaching the 90-degree grazing angle, but the amplitude at the center at the 90-degree grazing angle is not perfectly zero. So we review the dash amplitude response in detail, and we propose that it's not only the cosine square theta is controlling the dash amplitude response versus angle. We also have another term due to the change of the perpendicular strain of the fiber optic cable. This perpendicular strain causes the change in refractive index of the fiber optic cable, and the change of the refractive index can cause the change of the phase of the light pulses in during the Rayleigh backscattering process. So here we include the transverse strain into the formula, and the transverse strain projection onto the fiber optic cable is controlled by sine square theta. And we also have the alpha term in front of sine theta. That is the ratio between the Young modulus of the outer cable to the inner cable. And our model is quite matched with the POPs experiment in the previous slide. And when we combine with the amplitude array response, we get the dash amplitude response variation between the frequency and grazing angle. We can see that at low frequency of the seismic wave, the dash response is quite high, positive high amplitude for the 0-degree grazing angle, and decay and reach the negative amplitude at the 90-degree grazing angle. However, for the high frequency seismic wave, for example at 600 Hz, you can barely observe the amplitude if the wave propagating in the same direction as the optical fiber. However, you can observe a quite stronger amplitude, but in negative direction at the 90-degree grazing angle. So we use this information to our experiment by using high frequency seismic sources, and we use this the benefit of having strong amplitude at the 90-degree grazing angle to build the seismic image of the near surface geological structures. Here we show the modeling of the dash seismic response in our experiments. For the left panel showing the source code directivity, where the source depth is around 0.6 meter below the sea surface, and the frequency of the seismic source is 600 Hz. And the middle panel shows the dash array directivity, which is the receiver side, using alpha equal to 1, which is a perfect case where the outer cable materials and the inner fiber core materials are the same. And here show the total directivity. This is the case for zero crossline offset. You can see that with this high frequency, we see a strong negative amplitude at the zero inline offset, which is around 90-degree grazing angles. And we don't see much amplitude at far inline offset, where the wave propagating almost in parallel to the fiber-optic cable. This slides also shows similar modeling, but for the seismic source at 60-meter crossline offset away from the dash fiber-optic cable. One sees that the amplitude at the inline offset is smaller, but we see the same behavior at far or inline offset, that we don't see clear signal at far offset. So we can use this near offset information to build the seismic image. Next, I will describe the setup of our experiment. So we use the research vessel named Gunnar Ross, which is owned by NTNU, to tow the seismic sources, and a single channel hydrophone streamer behind, as shown in the figure here. And at the same time, when we shooting the stream seismic source, we also record the dash data using Octodash interrogator that's developed by Alcatel Submarine Networks, connected to the existing telecommunication fiber in the Trondheimsfjord, Norway. The channel spacing of the dash data we use at 2 meter, and the gauge strength is 4 meter, same as the pulse width. And the recording time interval is sampling rate at 0.44 millisecond. We shoot the seismic at every 267 millisecond, and we move the vessel slowly, so the average source sampling interval is about 0.27 meter. The frequency of the seismic source is around 350 to 1000 Hz, and dominant frequency is at 600 Hz. We try to navigate the seismic vessel to be close to the dash cable as much as possible. We try to follow the path like this. We start the first shot around here, and end of the last shot around here. So here is Vankuman, which is a small island near the Trondheimsfjord, Norway. This is a typical source signature of our HMS 620 bubble pulsar. We can see that the frequency range is quite broad, and dominant frequency is around 600 Hz. Now we will look at the data characteristics recorded by both streamers and dash cable. These show raw data, which is a common channel gathered from those streamers. We can observe direct wave since the source and streamer is about 10 meters apart. And we clearly observe the sea floor reflection, highlighted by B here. And also we observe subsurface seismic reflection here, as highlighted by the C letter. We also do navigation QC by comparing the water depth measured by the vessel navigation system compared to the receiver water depth from the map or from the report when they place the telecommunication cable in the sea floor, and it's quite matched. And here we plot also the minimum offset, which is the minimum offset between the seismic vessel and the dash cable. And here is the source cable distance. This is a typical common shot gather recorded by DAS. Since DAS data is continuously recorded, we tailor the shot record by synchronizing the time, the start recording time for each shot. So here we also in the paper discuss the method to calibrate the start time of the shot and how to tailor the seismic shot gather from continuously recorded DAS data. Left panel is raw data and the right panel is the same data after applying a bandpass filter from 160 to 960 Hertz. We can clearly see the direct arrival, which is hyperbolic event here, which is a direct wave from the seismic source to the seabed dash receiver. We barely see the subsurface reflection in this single shot gather. However, when we combine many shots and do some stacking, we can observe the subsurface structures. We will discuss later. We can also source the dash data to common channel gathers. This is show the channel gather at the channel number 1251. This is a typical characteristic. You can see the nice direct arrival amplitudes at the zero inline offset, and at some point at around 50 meter inline offset, you observe the change in the polarity of the direct arrival from black to white and white to black, highlighted by green marks here. Yellow marks show the direct arrival, and now we can see some subsurface reflection tail in this gather as well. Here I show some more common channel gathers to scan through the data. We also observe similar characteristics as in the previous slide. For the other channels, also similar. We see a clear direct arrival amplitude and zero offset, and have some variation in amplitude for the far offset. This also shows another common channel gather in the deep water. Also see nice direct arrival here. Here we will discuss the method how to build a seismic image from dash data. We apply NMO correction or normal move-out correction for the direct wave by defining the equation like this, so that we can flatten the seismic event before NMO to the flat seismic event after NMO, so that it look like the virtual source is on the top of the dash receiver. For the sea level redatum travel time, the NMO expression for the direct wave is expressed to this form. For the subsurface reflected wave, we apply the conventional NMO expression for the two-way time of the typical surface seismic processing. So we have two separate NMO correction equations. The first one is to flatten the direct arrival as shown in the middle panel, and the second one is to flatten the subsurface reflection as shown in the right panel. So we apply two separate NMO correction method, and then we stack and then combine the image of the two components. The first one is from direct wave, another one is from subsurface reflections. Now we're going to show you some results. Here's a full list of the processing sequence I apply. We do NMO correction, followed by mill the stretch, and then we stack and then combine the image from the direct wave and the subsurface reflection, and then we do some conditioning to improve the image. This is a sample of velocity analysis for the direct wave. Actually it's water velocity, and here we show that we align well our NMO correction equation with direct wave, and here is the reflection below the seabed, where we will correct in the next slide. This is velocity analysis for the subsurface reflection. We see that our velocity align well with the reflection below the seabed here, and this is the semblance velocity panel. And after NMO correction, we flatten the reflection, but it's under corrected for the direct wave here. Here we show the results of NMO correction at the checkpoint number 2161. We before correction, shown in the left panel, we observe both direct wave and reflected wave. After NMO correction for the direct wave, in the middle panel, we see that we already flat the direct wave, but over corrected the reflected wave. And for the NMO correction for reflected wave on the right panel, we flatten the reflected wave, but under corrected the direct wave. Here we compare the final image from the reference tow streamer data. On the left panel is the image from tow streamer data, and on the right panel is the final image from our seabed dash recording data. You can see that we see both seafloor image nicely, as same as in the reference tow streamer image. And we also see the subsurface reflection similar in both images. However, it seems that the dash image is slightly noisier, and the horizons here between the blue and orange define the zone that we compute the noise, and the orange and green define the zone we compute the signal. To compute the signal to noise ratio, shown in the next few slides. Here we compare the signal to noise ratio of dash in the blue curve and the streamer in the orange curve. No, mostly the streamer image has higher signal to noise ratio than dash. However, for the deep water, we observe that dash and streamer have about similar level of signal to noise ratio. For the frequency spectrum, we observe that the dash data has uh, more low frequency contents. However, for streamer images, we don't have much low frequency content. We also observe the NMO Stretch Effect. For the bottom panel plot here, showing the NMO stretch of the dash in the blue curve compared to the NMO stretch from the streamer, we can see that the NMO stretch related to the water depth and the cross-line offset. For the shallow water depth, the stretch will be very high for dash, and also if we have large cross-line offset, we also have a very high minimum stretch, which come to poor resolution of the dash image. On the right panels here show the near trace gather before NMO and after NMO. You can see that at the shallow water and large cross-line offset, you can see that the event become stretched. But for the deep water and short cross-line offset, you don't see much NMO stretch effect for this event highlighted by B here. Now we come to the conclusion. We can produce subsurface image using dash data from submarine telecommunication cable in an active seismic survey. We also demonstrate that the dash image can be derived from direct wave and subsurface reflections resulting from controlled seismic sources. The quality of the images can be further improved or optimized by using sufficiently large source energy in a proper frequency range. The image resolution can be improved by minimizing the cross-line offset between seismic sources and dash cable. We would like to thank the Research Council of Norway, the crew on board the NTNU's research vessel Gunnerus, Alcatel Submarine Networks, or ASN, for providing the interrogator, Shearwater Geoservices software provide the reviews processing software for some analysis in this study. We thank partners of Center for Geophysical Forecasting at NTNU as shown here. Thank you.